update. As we typically do, we put that in the board book for you to review, and we don't have a formal presentation, but we do want to take any questions or thoughts you might share about what's in the agenda.
All right. Do we have any questions on the quarterly financial report? Okay. Then we're ready for the next item.
All right, the next item is, we've been talking with you for many months now about the 2016-17 budget. We have another update this evening with some good news, I think, and we're definitely drawing closer to adopting the budget in June. So I'll turn it over to our CFO, Steve Bassett.
Thank you, sir. Madam President, members of the board, thank you for allowing us to speak tonight to update you on the budget. A lot of information. We'll try to get through it quickly, but we have seen a lot of good news, good developments with some of our appraisal values, and also we'll be able to speak to that. And we'll also touch on where we're at with 15-16. I know we didn't get into any questions on the financial update, but we'll touch on our current year and how that's going. All right, so we'll get through what has changed in our assumptions. We'll talk about the property values and what we're thinking about from a tax rate perspective, including a slide on how we compare with other districts. Ms. Touche will get into discussion on compensation and some of our recommendations. Then we'll bring that back to the proposed budget, and we'll talk through some of our fund balance strategies. All right, so the major things that are in the budget assumptions that you see that are different are in bold items. And that's we're looking at 11.2% property value growth. That definitely helps in terms of, closing that gap. Although the gap between the CPTD of, 14.5 and 11.2 for the property value, that's still over $9 million in terms of that gap. So we are going to have a net decline in revenue year over year. It's just not as big as we thought it might be. So we'll show you what those numbers look like. There are some additional campus positions that are in the staffing, and there's more detail in the agenda item later, but those have been baked into the plan. Those are all campus formula based. And then also we have the compensation adjustments, and we'll speak in a lot more detail about those in a moment. So the property value growth, so just to give you an idea of what that looks like. So you got the 15.4% last year, or the year we're finishing up, to the 11.2. So it would have been just shocking to have as high as we were last year, the 15%. Given there has been some slowdown, it would be interesting to see what that number would have been if oil had still been at $90 a barrel. Who knows? But anyway, we're still looking at overall value growth in excess of 10%. So from a tax rate perspective, we are in fact, because of the increase in appraisal values, very comfortable with recommending the 2-penny decrease in our INS tax rate. And so if you look at our calculation, and this is the part of the calculation that goes into the truth in taxation calculations that we have to publish before the public hearing that we have on our budget. We put the numbers in, so you have the average taxable value of a resident. So that's actually going up from $219,000 to just over $240,000, 9.7% increase for the average home value in the district. If you have the M&O rate staying at $1.04, even with the decline in the INS rate to the 0.28, we do have a percentage change of 8% more in property taxes. But with that, we're able to absorb everything that's happening with our bond program without increasing the rate, which is something we're seeing from a lot of our peer districts. If you look at our peer districts in the tax year that we're currently in, so we're over here at the end, $1.34. Okay, the rest of them are higher. With the decline in 2 pennies, we'll drop beneath Round Rock in terms of this comparison. This comparison group is not just from districts in the adjacent counties, but these are ones that are more comparable to us in size, but also comparable to us in terms of growth. Okay, which is very important to note. But we will be publishing a table, because we always get asked about it in terms of what's going on just within Harris County. But I haven't seen anybody else reducing their rate. So anyway, we're very happy to be able to do that. Okay, so looking just at the revenue, when you think about the green bar just shows how we've been getting more of a reliance on local collections, local revenue, versus the blue, which is the state revenue. So this is just a different way of looking at that over time. Mr. Rice had asked about those percentages, and you can see in the small sliver in the middle is that's actually the regular local revenue that we have in terms of athletics and investments and other things like that. But the state aid is the blue, and then the tax levy itself is the green number. All right. So we're going to turn the corner a little bit and get into compensation. Before Ms. Touche jumps in, I'm going to talk a little bit about the teacher pay scales and share with you some of the discussion we had with the BCC about this just a week ago, or a couple weeks ago, with the Budget and Compensation Committee. So if everybody remembers, the blue line is where we were at from a compensation perspective for our teachers in 14-15, and we had committed to smoothing out that scale, which is something we did take care of in the 15-16 year. You can still see we still have a higher slope in the out years with steps that are beyond 500. With the 2% raise that we gave in the prior year, we weren't able to totally smooth out the scale completely, but hopefully we'll be able to get there in the future. But again, so this is where we were in the past. And so if you look at our 15-16 scale, so now we're in the blue-purple the blue-purple markers there. You can see that we're kind of intermixed there. We are the lead. We are the lead here in this one grouping, and then we do catch up again on the higher end of the scale. This is Katy down here, and then pretty much Lamar and Cy-Fair are pretty much right on top of each other. So we had this discussion because we were talking with the BCC, is what would our scale look like if we did not do the teacher step? Because we said, do we want to do the teacher step, or do we want to do some of the other things associated with compensation? And so if you look at this chart, but then you adjust it for what our chart would look like if we didn't do the step, then you could see we would definitely lose some ground. And the BCC definitely felt like the $2.5 million investment to have the teachers move up the step was certainly worth it. So, what it does is that it keeps things flat here. All right, you'd have the same, the starting, because that's what we've actually advertised, unless you wanted to lower the starting pay. But you'd have that, those would be the same, and then you'd have that amount there. So you'd have a much bigger gap here and even a bigger gap here. And so the BCC did agree with our recommendation that did make a lot of sense to have the teachers move up the step, which is something that they've been expecting and we've been talking about. And so in the backup from the compensation, you can see what that means to the various teachers where they are on the scale. For most teachers, it is a $500 increase. Okay. All right. So Ms. Touche is going to get into more compensation discussion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bassett, and good evening, everyone. We each year have an annual review process over our traditional pay structure. So what Mr. Bassett just addressed was half of our workforce. The other half fall on our traditional pay scale. And our annual process focuses on 3 areas. The first area is our job reclassification process. That entails positions that may evolve over time. We may see a change in duties over a period of time, and so we will conduct a job audit to learn more about those changes that potentially exist. And if we find that a reclassification is warranted, we will make a recommendation to change that position from one pay grade to another pay grade within our traditional pay structure. The second area of focus is our internal equity. We look at incumbents and compare them among others within that same job family to ensure that we are addressing any salary issues that may exist. And that's we have a We currently are in the process of completing a credible years of experience project where we're looking at incumbents within each job family to ensure that any adjustments that are needed are taken care of. The external equity focuses on our benchmarking against other districts because we want to remain competitive among our peer districts. All of this aligns with our compensation strategy. Our district goal is to recruit, develop, and retain effective teachers and staff. And specifically in our area, we are focused on making sure we have a competitive compensation structure. So within the Total Rewards Department and Human Resources, we have a concentrated focus on our credible years of experience project in which we're looking at internal equity and to improve that by 30% this year with the goal of correcting any inequities that exist among our employees by the year 2018. In addition to that, we have a goal within our department to focus on establishing a competitive stipend salary structure for our employees. This year, we looked at 11 different school districts and compared our stipend awards to those school districts. And so the recommendations that I'm going to present to you are our findings in looking at those 11 school districts. This year, for our external equity, we benchmarked against other school districts 47 of our positions in the district. And of those 47, we found that there are 13 that warrant a pay grade adjustment. We have an annual review process that we follow each year. We begin around October to November asking for leaders in the district to submit requests to our department for consideration. In addition to that, we have been working toward a annual review cycle for all positions in the district. So what that entails is having our positions reviewed on an annual basis or every 2 years or every 3 years, depending on the position. So then in November, December, after we receive requests from our leaders, we compile all of that data, we bring it forth to our executive leadership team for review, and then based on their recommendations, we move forward in January through March to begin our work benchmarking against other districts or reviewing internal equity among our incumbents. In March to May, we then provide an opportunity for our stakeholders to give us some feedback around the recommendations that we're proposing. We recently met with our Budget and Compensation Committee to present the recommendations to them, to give us feedback. We've been working with them all along the year to present benchmark data. They had an opportunity actually this year to look at the 11 school districts that we benchmarked against. We gave them a comparison chart of all the data stipend information from those districts, and they were able to give us some feedback and thoughts around what they would do if presented with this information and making recommendations. And then lastly, in May, we bring these recommendations to you as a presentation and part of our budget considerations for this year. Last year, when we presented to you, I wanted to revisit very quickly. These are the job groups that we reviewed last year. This would include both internal and external equity as well as our reclassifications. If you recall, last year we had quite an audience from our police force who was quite happy about the recommendations going forth in their area. We had a high focus on our aides, both severe and non-severe, and you can see the other groups there. We had a high focus again on our instructional support staff. This year, we are continuing to look at our instructional support staff. We have just about reviewed all of the internal equity for the incumbents that are in our pay grade 100 group, which again is our instructional support staff, and we have benchmarked the majority of positions within that pay group. We've also begun looking at our business services side, as well as our campus administration, principals, assistant principals, deans of instructions. So just to give you an idea of the work that's involved, those 47 positions that we benchmarked this year, I wanted to show you, I'm just going to give you an example of one pay group that we looked at. These are our LSSPs. These are the school districts that we benchmarked against. You can see that Fort Bend there is grade at the top. That's what we currently offer as our midpoint on our pay range for that pay grade 103, $328.83. We then compared against other districts, and we are making a recommendation to move that position from pay grade 103 to 104 based on that information as well as other factors. You can see that I have the attrition data illustrated for you. We look at the turnover rate for positions. We also look at the number of vacancies. Some of these positions, these LSSP positions, we haven't been able to fill this year, so we look at the vacancies that have remained on the books throughout the year. We also look at data when making salary calculations. If we have folks that are turning down positions because the salary's not where they expect it to be, we consider that as well. So that's an example of looking at data and then making a recommendation to reclassify the position. On the other hand, this is an example of the executive assistants we looked at this year, and they are in a pay grade 405 with a midpoint salary of $169.58 a day. And comparing against other districts, we felt like we were market competitive with other executive assistants in these districts, and so we did not make a recommendation to reclassify them. However, any position that didn't warrant a reclassification, we did an internal equity review on those folks. So we did look at every incumbent within that job family to make sure their salary was on point. So even though we're not bringing forth a recommendation budget-wise to change them to a different pay grade, it may be that these folks will receive a salary adjustment based on an internal equity review. In terms of the compensation recommendation, I want to draw your attention to attachment E that was in your packet. It details the compensation budget for this year. The instructional positions listed at the top, we again took a look at mostly the pay grade 100 group, and then anything listed to the left as equity is internal equity. Anything listed as market review is our external benchmarking against other districts. And then the second group are our non-instructional support positions. And I have a detailed listing there of the positions that we're bringing forth for recommendation. And then the next...
Excuse me, Ms.
Yes,
Touche.
ma'am.
So the, in our materials, maybe it's in this, but those charts weren't labeled, or I couldn't find where it was labeled, attachment E. We got to C, but then I lost it from there on.
Yes, ma'am. And I did receive your question, so I took the liberty of detailing the positions for you. It's coming around now.
Okay, I see D.
So what I did, there were so many positions that we looked at this year, the list would be really long. So I collapsed them to group them as instructional professionals, but the list you're receiving right now details the positions that encompass the instructional professionals. Okay, for example, if you look at your attachment E, the first line states instructional professionals for internal equity review, and then it's listed here, those instructional professionals are the specific positions that we looked at within that job group.
Okay.
Okay, and then campus administration is the second line. And then I have campus administration, that job group, I've detailed the specific positions that we looked at in reviewing and benchmarking against other districts. Is that helpful? And my apologies for not...
I think what she's saying is we didn't get E in our packet at all.
Oh, you didn't get this?
No.
Okay.
So we don't.
Attachment E?
Yeah, so we don't have anything, this doesn't help us because we don't have E to begin with, so.
Okay, I did make a copy of that as well. So let me get that to you one moment.
We stop at D.
Yeah,
I
that
couldn't figure out
would
if
be
that was
helpful to
all
have
D
this
or-
information.
I think it is all D because we certainly don't have that.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. So this attachment E references the compensation recommendations, both internal equity and external equity. It also lists any reclassifications that we're making recommendations for. So again, if you look at the first line on attachment E, it states instructional professionals, and then the specific positions are listed that correlate with that.
Thank you.
Also, may I point out one other item? In the number of incumbents, you'll see two numbers listed in the second column under number of incumbents. So we reviewed all the instructional professionals. There are some that we are bringing forth for a salary adjustment. Not all of them warrant an adjustment. So it's like 10 out of 15, if that's also helpful.
So like 109 out of 213.
That is correct. So we reviewed 213, but 109 will receive an equity adjustment if the budget is approved.
One more question before you move on. So these are, when you say salary adjustments, you mean adjustments up?
That is correct.
Okay, I just want to clarify that. So going back to your example, 109 out of 213 instructional professionals will receive a salary increase.
That is correct.
Adjusting for equity,
That is correct.
internal equity.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Oops. Okay, then, so attachment C, my fingers are crossed, you received attachment C, which illustrates our stipend recommendations for this year. So looking at attachment C, and this only details any changes for stipends. We have a much more comprehensive stipend roster. So if you'll look at the Fine Arts Department, we are making a recommendation to increase the stipend award for these particular stipends in the fine arts area. Then moving down, if you look at the department head for middle school and high school, as well as the team lead at the elementary level, we're recommending an allotment increase. So currently, we have an allotment of 8 for high school and 7 for middle school. And so we're just asking for an additional allotment, because what we're finding is principals are needing to choose between awarding a stipend for a department head for a special education teacher or maybe a PE teacher. So there's 8 allotments now, but they have more teachers that they're wanting to award the department head stipend to, and some of them are splitting, or some are not receiving it at all. So this would be beneficial to allow that award to more folks within those content areas. Okay, at the elementary academic stipend area, you'll see that we're requesting to increase the National Junior Honor Society award from $300 to $500. We currently do not have a stipend for Destination Imagination at the elementary level, so we're recommending a stipend award for that. We're looking at removing the Safety Patrol stipend. And then at the district stipend award level, the discretionary stipend, as part of our vetting process, we also reached out to campus leaders and asked for input. And some of the feedback that we received from principals is they would like to have some discretionary funds at their campus to use for, different activities that teachers are sponsoring. And so this year, we're recommending an allotment of $500 to use at their discretion based on their campus needs. In addition to that, we currently do not have a stipend for a world language facilitator, a health facilitator, and a PE facilitator. So we're asking that we add that award to the roster. In benchmarking against other districts, we found that to be more competitive in our journalism speech debate facilitator and the amount of duties that are associated with that responsibility, we are needing to increase the stipend in those areas. This year, they launched They launched, oh my goodness, Long, I may need some help on this. The website at the campus. School Wires, thank you. They launched School Wires this year, and various employees at the campus assumed responsibilities, and it was just a big job. We heard from our stakeholders at the BCC that, we really should be compensated because it's a lot of work. So we're recommending to add that stipend award. We're looking at adding a senior class sponsor stipend, a master trade certification stipend. So these are for folks maybe in the transportation department, a master mechanic that's becoming certified in that area. We're finding that to be competitive in our market, that person, once they get their certification, could go elsewhere and receive that certification. We found that to be awarded at other districts. And then the sign-on bonus for the interpreter for deaf, or RDSPD, is something that the committee that oversees that in partnership with Rosario County voted on and approved, so we're adding that to our stipend roster. The police force, we're also looking for a stipend award. It's pretty much the same thing as the master trade certification, in that when they receive an intermediate, advanced, or master certification, there's an award that other districts are providing to the police force. So to be better aligned with other districts, we're recommending that. Currently, our ROTC teachers do not receive a stipend for the after-school duties that they perform, getting those students ready for, assisting at football games and things like that. We're also recommending a sign-on bonus for CTE hard to fill. What we found last year as we were hiring folks, especially in the health science area, we were struggling being competitive with other districts that were offering a stipend to hard to fill. So we are asking that we kind of leave that open, because each year there are things that are changing in that area, and it changes very quickly. So we're looking to identify those needs as it arises. And then lastly, in the athletics area, they're looking to add a middle school stipend for soccer. So that's a lot going on with our stipend roster this year. So in summary, we're asking for a $1.85 million budget to accommodate the reclassifications, internal equity and external equity, as well as stipends. Do you have any questions?
Do we have any questions? Mr. Burdine?
I had a question from earlier in the presentation, but it didn't pertain to what we just got done talking about. Mr. Bassett, I wanted to ask you something real quick here. On our page number 8, you had shown us where we receive revenues, and the local revenue over since 14-15, 15-16, and 16-17 looks like it's decreased quite a bit.
Yeah, let me.
No,
Yeah, I know which one he's talking about. Let me just.
you can.
Yeah, the reason why that's actually gone down is because the extended learning revenue used to be in the general fund, but now we're accounting for that outside of the general fund in its own separate enterprise fund. And so that was a revenue amount, to the tune of $5 to $6 million.
Wow. Okay.
I'm sorry?
Facilities as
And facility rentals as well. So so when you look at the financial reports, you'll see that those are accounted for separately in those enterprise funds.
Okay, so that started in 14-15?
Yes.
Okay. And then you'd mentioned a slide or two later, I didn't mark this, but the step for the teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain that to me briefly?
Okay, so let me show you on this one. So if all of the teachers that are at 0 year now, okay, if we don't allow them to move up the step, they would be all the same pay that they are now. And so that's why we're showing that as just coming over for that amount.
Okay.
then everybody else will be at that 500 more. But because of that movement over 1 year of experience without an increase in pay, that's why it hurts the look of our scale in comparison to the other districts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Okay.
I didn't catch that the first time. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, Mr. Rosenthal?
Yeah, looking at that same slide, I know when we initiated or started approving raises 2 years ago, it was looking like with those raises, we were going to be pretty much at the top of our competitors, but obviously they did the same thing apparently. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I get reminded frequently by my peers that we were the first to do 50,000, and they always kind of say, well, thanks a lot, and so, but as you can see, though, they've moved their starting pay ahead of ours. And so, you know, it's just interesting. Across the region, people are looking at the salaries different. Several, including Katie, are doing what we're doing in terms of just holding steady and maybe doing a supplement later. But some are doing a 1 or 2% increase. I mean, Humble's going to do a 3% increase. I don't know where they're getting the funds for that. But I mean, it's not like I've analyzed their financials. I got other things to do. But you know, it's just interesting given the state finances and the sales taxes. You know, I think that would be pretty aggressive to be doing that right now. So.
All right, anything else? Mr. George?
Yeah, I just wanted to, this is more like a clarification, not maybe question. I see that we talked about it last time. I know it is just, maybe we are repeating. So you feel very comfortable 2% decrease in our tax rate?
Yes.
And so I know even last time, I think Mr. Rice was asking the same question. And what if our growth rate changes, you know, like property tax?
Yeah, I mean, if our property values end up going down, okay, which, I mean, it certainly could happen. I mean, given our growth, I mean, it would take something pretty major on a statewide and countrywide basis for that to happen. But if you look at our maturities of our debt, remember we talked about 97% is going to mature within 20 years.
Sure.
We have, as we issue debt, we have the ability to put more in the back end if we needed but to keep things smoothed out, to be able to handle things within our rate. But if you look at, this slide, when I saw this, really kind of hit home to me what made me feel better about doing the 2% the 2 penny decline. I mean, even with the 2 penny decline, our average taxpayer, I mean, is going to be spending 8% more. My goodness.
I know, believe me, I got my appraisal.
Yeah. And
I don't like it a bit.
So, I mean, we're being, we're a cautious bunch, okay? I mean, we are. And I think that's why we're not being aggressive on overall salary increases, although we're doing some things for compensation. But we were definitely comfortable with the 2 penny decrease, and we'll just have to see how that progresses.
Sure.
With our debt management plan through the coming years.
And I think it is absolutely wonderful, and I'm sure our taxpayers will appreciate it, even though our taxes are going up. Nothing you can do about it. And I see a number of good things happening with the proposal, the teacher pay increase, which is, I'm sure all of us are always been supportive of, and the stipend compensation structure. I think that is a wonderful thing. I always believe in compensating based on their effort. See, coming back to the school wire, I have a question. Is that the campus website?
That's correct, sir. It's a campus website administrators. Usually we have 2 to 3 to help maintain the campus up to date.
Okay, so this is an issue, we talked about it in the past, and how many of our campuses are using our new campus website format? I mean, I still see that there are some campuses.
We still have one phase left to migrate.
Okay.
And we're going to start that in the fall, sir. We have migrated all of high school, middle school, and pretty much three-quarters of the elementary.
Sure.
So
And I still see how struggle in update, when I look for something, I even go to some schools and see what is going on the calendar and stuff like that. Who is going to hold somebody accountable for these updates?
And we are hoping the CWAs, which is the campus website administrators,
Sure.
will hold them accountable for their maintaining the website. If not, then we resort back to contacting the principals and the assistant principal who are in charge of that.
Okay, and because I think I do have, always I felt most of our community go and check the campus website to see what is going on, and if the calendar is not updated. We discussed this before, and you see, when we are planning to complete with our phase, final phase?
We should be complete by the end of, probably the end of the fall semester. That's when we migrate all of our elementaries over.
Oh, okay. So I will be looking forward to seeing that, how often you anticipate somebody updating the website?
As soon as they change something, sir. That's what we anticipate. Now, what we're going to do is we also going to be hiring some temporary website administrators and actually help teachers who are still lagging in terms of updating the website.
Sure.
And actually help them hands-on.
Sure.
So that way they can at least get things going.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing that efficiently done, because, that is an important factor
Yes, sir.
to really look at it. Thank you. That's my few questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. George. I have a question. Does anybody else have a question? I have a question on the CTE hard to fill. Well, actually, stay on this slide for a second. Let me just ask a clarifying question. So the 2 cents is in the INS rate reduction, so it's not money that can be used for pay raises or in the stipend budget or anything like that, is that?
Yeah, that's
correct?
exactly right. And so this kind of gets to some of the frustration, by our taxpayers when they see that, hey, the average is going up 8%, but we're actually going to have a decline in general fund revenue. And it's like, well, how does that happen? Well, we're in a lawsuit over that. And so it's obviously very complicated, but yes, we cannot use those funds for any of these other things we're talking about.
Right, okay, so I just wanted to clarify that so we would have an understanding. And then hopefully the school finance lawsuit will sort out the funding system from the state, and we will be able to do these things we'd like to do, like make our pay scales competitive with our surrounding districts and so forth, so.
Right.
Okay, my other question has to do with the CTE signing bonus for the hard-to-fill positions. And it looks like you have $30,000 allocated for that at $2,500 apiece. So are we kind of going for 12? Or is there some discretion about how we're going to divide that up? Or it sounded a little bit vague on the explanation.
Yes. Yeah, we're trying to make our best estimate of how many we may need for this year. It depends on the turnover rate, and it also depends on the position as we define it as hard to fill. So like last year, our health science teacher, as we were offering positions, they were informing us the district they're coming from. They're not only getting service credit counted for the area that they're working in, like health science teachers, if they had medical experience in the medical field, other districts were awarding service credit for them. And then they were also informing us that they were receiving a stipend. So we verified calling the districts and found out that, yes, Katy is offering these stipends. They're also offering service credit for other experience than teaching, and we're anticipating that this is going to also occur in other areas of CTE that are hard to fill.
Okay, thank you for that information. All right, so I think, Mr. Bassett, we're ready to go on the next
Yeah, we just have a few
section.
more. Bear with me, let me get back there. Almost done. The pain's almost
All right,
over.
put all those previous 25 slides together, and you get
Okay.
this.
All right, so now we're going to go over the budget at a very high level. We will be hopefully sending out at the end of this week a comprehensive budget update that's going to be a book for you to look at that's going to have much, much more detail, and that'll be at the end of this week. Okay, all right. But we're looking at a total revenue in the coming year of just under $589 million. And from a budget perspective, two views, one by major function and then also by major object. So again, function is what we're spending it on. You know, what is the purpose of the funds? So you can see we have 63% of the $592 million in the instructional related services. And then if you look at by major object code, you know, this is what is it made up of? So 86.7% of this current budget view is in people, payroll costs. That includes all expenses associated with staff, including benefits. So if you look at how we're doing, so in 15-16, so to give you a little bit of detail there, we're looking at a surplus of $7.2 million, but on top of that, you can see in the other sources uses $6.7 million. What does that mean? What's happening there? We're going to be transferring $3 million to a technology internal service fund, and then also to our vehicle replacement fund. We're going to be creating that fund to fund a lot of the vehicle. We have a major vehicle replacement initiative that we're going to be doing, so we're going to fund that in that way. And then that $7.2 million will drop into our fund balance, and then we'll get into the strategies here in a moment. But as you can see, for 16-17, we're looking at right now we're at a deficit of $2.3 million, but we're planning from a fund balance perspective to be, you know, well in line, and I'm still basically expecting a break-even budget in as far as our results in 16-17 to be to break even. If you look at the fund balance strategies, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be replenishing the major maintenance fund. We are going to be transferring out, you know, about $3.8 million to take care of some of the projects at Dulles with the electrical and the closures. So that was what some of that transfer out was. We'll be replenishing that to get back to about $6.4 million in that fund. We'll be carrying over the instructional materials amount, the transportation amount will actually drop down a bit to increase the new instructional facility amount up to $4.5 million. And you can see the rest will be going into our economic stabilization fund that we can use to balance out the budget, but then that also helps us going into the next year as well. And so with these strategies, we'll be able to, you know, maintain where we need to be from a policy perspective, to have 1 month of our operating balance in the state revenue stabilization fund, as well as 2 months in the unassigned fund balance. Okay, to basically be at 90 days, and we're projecting that we will be able, with these fund balance strategies, to be able to be there in 17-18 by the end of 17-18 as well. And then in that 18-19, hopefully in 18-19 is when the cavalry comes with regard to, you know, whatever happens from a state funding perspective. And so just to just show you another view of the fund balance history, so you can see we've shaded that committed 1 month amount for the state stabilization, and you can see that total amount there for the unassigned fund balance. And budget adoption, so our actual briefing, what we're going to be doing, the budget hearing is actually 4 weeks from tonight. And so, you know, it's June 6th, and so that's why it'll be important to get that the budget book into your hands, so you'll be able to start taking a look at that, so we can work out any issues that we may have between now and that time. And we're going to be publishing in May, toward the end of this month, because we have to publish the truth in taxation and the budget numbers 10 days before the budget hearing. 18th is when we're going to be. So the 18th is when we're planning on publishing. Okay. So if there's any questions on that that third of the presentation, we'd be happy to take them.
All right, do we have any questions on the budget from anyone? Great. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Bassett, and thank you, Dina, for being here. Very nice presentation. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Shea, as well.
All right. Our final presentation this evening is we wanted to give you a brief update. You know, the board's, one of your top 5 priorities for the last year or so has been program evaluation. The team has done a lot of work on that. But to set it up, I would tell you, if you recall back on the board's self-evaluation a week or so ago, we talked extensively about the 5 priorities, and we talked about the order of the work that needs to be done. And so we've done a little revision and update to the program evaluation work that they've been engaged in. So we're not going to do a full report, but we do want to touch base on where we are. And Chrissy's going to give a good update and kind of what the near term holds as we plan for a longer term solution and implementation.
Okay. Good evening, President James, members of the board. It's our privilege to be here to just give you a very brief update tonight on program evaluation and the work of the task force that began meeting around November of this past year. I have with me Megan Evans and Brian Gwynn to assist. As Dr. Dupree just outlined, we just kind of wanted to begin with a clear frame of where does program evaluation fit into the board's priorities. Of course, it is one of your 5 main priorities there, and you can see that tonight we'll focus on that particular one. I do want to mention to you that we have had program evaluation in Fort Bend ISD for a number of years, but as you'll hear, we have not found it to be systematic or perhaps bringing us the clear processes and the avenues to communicate back with the board and the stakeholders. And so those have been some of the things that have driven the work. This just really puts your 5th priority of leadership, I think, in a very clear view that as we work this year working with adult leaders, student leaders, you can see the connection to all aspects of the board's priorities and connected to that future work. This slide really refers to what should be in your board binder in looking at board policy. And this is just a snapshot of BI local. But I want to step back for a moment and I want to explain to you how that came to be. We did do a SWOT analysis where we looked at our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And just a couple of those that I want to point out. In looking at the weaknesses, what we found very clearly was that we did not have a clear model to evaluate a program, and nor did we have district policy guiding the work. And so those then became actions for us. And you have in your binder a sample of BI local for you to review. We would like to bring that back to you for approval in June with other policies, and we're welcome to your feedback. So wanted to go ahead and get that started and get that moving so we can have that policy defining our work as we're trying to do in so many other areas of the district. And lastly, in my part, I wanted to also share with you that when we think about opportunities, what does this work do for us? It really helps us answer the why. Why do we have the program? Is it a program that we want to continue, that we want to replicate in other places? Is it a program that we need to discontinue? And we help answer the question of why to our stakeholders. So very important work, and that's actually going to segue perfectly into Brian, who is going to talk to you a little bit about the purpose and beyond.
Thank you, Dr. Whitbeck. Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Dupree. So as you read in the memo, most of what we're working on is a team-driven approach, and that's part of the reason business and finance is sitting at the table with accountability, is we want to make sure as we go through this process, we have all the stakeholders within the organization looking at the processes that we have to make sure that we're being as efficient and effective as we can with our taxpayer money. So as we go through the process, the foremost thing in our mind is, are we providing the Board of Trustees with the information you all need to make governance decision related to the programs and items that we have that we're using for student implementation? The other item that we have is, as we evaluate the programs, are we providing our administrators with the information they need to ensure that what they are putting together and what they are doing is successful? So those are really 2 items that we look at related to the board situation as well as the administrator. And then the final item is, can we use the information that we're collecting as a continuous improvement tool to make adjustments to programs where we need to? As Dr. Whitbeck mentioned, in some cases, we may need to discontinue programs, but overall, how can we implement this process so that we are ensuring that we're utilizing the limited resources that we have in the most effective way possible? To help us guide us through that process, there are two things that we'll be utilizing in order to do that. One are the district strategic plan that we have, and the other are what we're calling priority indicators. And this may be a little confusing, but I'm going to use the term priority indicator here as a term as opposed to priority, because in some cases this doesn't line up to this is priority 1, this is priority 2, this is priority T. This is an indicator status that we use as we go through those processes. So as we talk about that, a priority 1 indicator would be one's programs that are under state or federal review where corrective action or compliance issues may be in play. So that would be a priority 1 type initiative that we would have. From a priority 2 perspective, those would be programs that we're implementing on the district level that have a high cost that we, in terms of resources, both from a people perspective as well as from a dollar perspective. And then the priority 3 would be activities that are reflecting current research or best practices related to program models. And one of the things that's important to point out is in some cases you may have a program that crosses priorities. So you would have an outcome that where it's a state or federal program that has a high cost, or conversely, we're implementing a new best practice and it has a high cost. So there would be some cases where you would see both of those priority indicators used. We have an 8-stage model that will be that we've adapted from the District Management Council that we'll be using to do what we call an academic return on investment. At the end of the day, we want to put a financial lens on what we're doing to make sure that the outcomes that we're delivering are cost-effective and cost-efficient. If we have a 1-to-1 ratio and we're having outstanding results, that may not be the best utilization to achieve the results, so we want to make sure that we're doing that. There are 4 phases to this model: a planning phase, a data collection phase, an evaluation phase, and an action stage. I won't go through all 8 steps of this ROI process, but I will point out to you from the memo that you've seen that at the evaluation process, prior to taking any action, that would be when we come back to the board and present to you, 1, the findings of what we have discovered through our program evaluation process, as well as any recommended action that we have related to those specific findings. So that would give you all the opportunity to weigh in on what we've discovered, as well as provide some guidance on how you all see us proceeding related to that. So with that, that concludes my component, and I'll turn it over to Megan to wrap things up.
All right, thank you. Good evening. One of the things that we did, we've been working as a task force since November to really kind of refine what do we want this process to look like, particularly with the academic return on investment. How do we select programs for evaluation? Brian touched on those priority identifiers. So we developed a comprehensive needs assessment, and we determined these 2 programs to evaluate for the fall of 2016, those being Vistas and Naviance. So we use those priority identifiers, we use data, input from various stakeholders, and those are what we would like to recommend as the 2 programs that we'll evaluate. So the Vistas program is a program that provides enriched educational environment for high-ability students at our Title I elementaries. So we're really looking here for, is this program effective? How do we expand this? How do we make this really benefit? Is it working? What changes do we need to make with that? So that's what some of the key pieces that we're going to be looking at for Vistas. We also recommended Naviance as a program that we'd like to evaluate in the fall. This is a college and career planning platform. This is a high-cost district initiative, and it is coming up for renewal. So we need to determine as a committee and then make a recommendation to the board, is this something we propose an extension, a renewal? This is an important program. We gotten a lot of positive feedback, but this is certainly one that's a priority based on cost and it coming out with our contract ending soon. So those are the 2 that we've identified. So what are our next steps for program evaluation? So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to seek approval for the policy BI local in June, and we're going to bring that to the board. We're also going to finalize a list of projects for the 2016-17 school year. One of our big priorities is obviously the EDGE program. That is one that is a high-cost district initiative, and we are beginning from the start of school to collect formative data there that we can use to have a summative evaluation to be able to make recommendations for the board. We will share those results for our fall 2016 projects with you, the board, in December or January of 2017. And one of the key pieces here is we're kind of piloting this process, that 8-step academic return on investment, how the criteria that we use to select programs. And so we're going to kind of make real-time adjustments as needed to the process since it is a pilot, and we'll be sharing updates with you as well for that. So that concludes our presentation. And so if you have any questions, we are ready.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for bringing that to us tonight. I'm sure we have questions. Mr. Rosenthal.
Yes, ma'am. Well, that sounds good. I hope that we get some good evaluations and cost effectiveness results out of this. I think it's definitely something that we need and have been looking forward to. Just as an example, you brought up Naviance and the feedback. And again, I realize you're probably not prepared to go into details on this, and that's fine, but when you said you're getting feedback, where is that necessarily coming from?
We're getting feedback from counselors, from staff members. We've spoken to Steve Shields. He was definitely one of the stakeholders involved in determining Naviance as a program for recommendation for evaluation. One of the key things that it is a 3-year contract. We're concluding year 2. So we thought that the fall of 2016 would be a really good time to look at the 2-year data in order for us to make an informed decision for extension or a 3-year renewal for that.
Okay. Can we make sure that there's student and parent feedback in there as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And that'll be a part of the evaluation, is to survey stakeholders. So we just surveyed informally our department people to determine, which programs to evaluate, but as part of the formal program evaluation, they will absolutely be included in that, yeah.
Okay, great.
Just a quick question. So just to piggyback on what Dave was asking, will there also be a full capacity evaluation of the actual program itself? Meaning, are we using it to its full extent? If it offers X number of components, 10 components, like for example, are we using all 10 components, and how many of the schools are using all 10 components, that kind of thing. So I would like to see that kind of data, especially on something like Naviance, is, how many students are using it? Is it something that's being used by all of our schools? I think all of our schools are supposed to be using it, or those who have it are supposed to be using it, right? But to what extent are they using it? And I remember my son, I think toward his senior year, he logged on or got access, but I don't think he actually utilized it to its full potential. So that's what I'm looking at. Just because you've touched the application or touched the program doesn't mean that we're using it. Okay.
Accessing those full benefits of the program, absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I remember in years past, I can't even remember some of the programs. Well, one was, okay, I won't bring that one up, but the one that shall not be mentioned, because we were tired of hearing about it, we'd hear about how many logons or something, and that's not really helpful. That's...
And it's got to be much more rich than that, as far as data, absolutely.
We really need to know whether it's helpful or not, just somebody logged on and, looked at it for a second. So, yeah, that was a good point that Addie brought up.
Yeah. Mr. George.
Yeah. First of all, I'm familiar with Naviance. Vistas, you said it's for elementary schools?
Yes, it's an elementary program for kinder through 3rd grade. We don't have Georgette here this evening, but it is our Title I elementaries. Mm-hmm. And it's a Vistas talent pool. I can provide additional information, but we are looking to identify students that wouldn't otherwise be identified and gifted and talented. They're clustered. Can you speak more to that? Sorry.
Yes, young children are clustered that are identified to be high ability and in Title I schools. And the hope is that by them being clustered and by different strategies that the teachers would expose them to, that then when it comes time for testing for GT, the likelihood of them qualifying would go up as a result of that clustering and that enrichment.
Sure.
And so we want to see, is that effective and is that working in this district?
Sure.
This is a program that is used in many districts across the country.
Sure. See, since I have a middle schooler and I hear, I attended some of the breakout sessions with Navians, and I'm so much in favor of that program.